MJD, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and please hit like. So I've got this old, not old, I guess it was new at one time, but it was, I think, tossed against a wall and completely destroyed. Well, the movement was good in it. The stem was stuck in it and broken in two. The hands were off. The face dial feet were off, screwed off and everything. So what I did to recover this, I put it at a bit of an angle, as you can see. So when you look at your watch, it's perfectly lined up with your eyes, which is kind of neat, actually. The only problem is your brain still thinks 11 o'clock is at the 12 o'clock position. So, so I did all that work, and I found a vintage crown for it, but I don't like the depth of the crown. So I'm going to see if I can adjust this depth just a bit to move it in more towards the movement case. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure how far in this could go. I've got to make sure that it doesn't kind of ground out or bottom out on the inside of the crown. So I'll measure this distance, but it's likely going to be a little more shallow than this. So if I do that and just take my micrometer and measure that, I'm going to kind of eyeball it on the inside. So it looks like it's right about there, 1.4. So turn it off, turn it on, zero it again, and then measure it one more time. And it looks like about 1.1, I think, 1.1 millimeters. So that's 1.1 millimeters, and that's the distance between the edge of the crown and the case itself, and that's in the actual winding position. Setting position is out even further, as you can see, like that. So I think I can bring this in a bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the case back. The simplest way of removing the case back is getting yourself a ball. It's a watchmaker's ball. It's got actually a little filler here, so you can get the right amount of air in there. It's a safe way of doing it. You just put pressure down on the ball and twist like that, and then the case just comes out. So the case back just comes off. It's great for watches that are stubborn as well, where you can't actually get a grip on it with all the different case removers. I've got lots of different case removers. I'll have to do a video on tools and case removers. So there we go. So there's the movement there. And the next thing I need to do is actually loosen this screw. So this screw has on the other side there's a plate, and that plate has a threaded hole in it, and that just moves it down, which releases the actual stem. So I'm not sure if I have the right screwdriver here, but let's see if I can do this without too much trouble. And I don't want to do it too much. If I do it too much, I lose the plate. So there's the stem there. So I want to actually mark this somehow, right? Because I want to take off, like I said, 1.1 millimeters is the number. But I first have to remove the crown again. And the crown is bottomed out on this now. So let's just remove the crown from the stem. And this is so I can cut it. I'm just holding the stem in here. Now I could hold it here, but I'm a little concerned that if I turn this, it might actually crack. No, it's doing a good job. So then I can actually remove the stem, or the crown from the stem. So there's the stem there. So I want to take off about looks like it's magnetized a bit, about 1.1 millimeters off the end of there. So I think the best method of actually removing material, I don't want to take all 1.1, because if I take all 1.1, the thing's going to bottom. There's 1.1 there. So if I just bring it in just a bit, we'll see if it bottoms. But I'm going to first test the crown on the movement. So now this is to determine how deep the crown goes into the movement. If you can look at the configuration of the crown here, that's what it looks like. It's an old vintage crown. And it will go in, and I want to see if it bottoms out. No, you can see that's as far as that crown will go in. So so I've got to take off a little bit of material off the stem, but not as much as 1.1. So, and the measurement there is probably a little less than 1.1. So we just hold that in place, try to leave it flat as I'm doing this, and just eyeball it again. It looks like it's 0.5. So I could probably take off 0.5 or 0.4 of the stem. not 1.1. So the one method of doing this is if I mark this, I just mark this with a black marker, and I take, it's 1.2 there. So 0.5, 0.4 is only that amount. So let me just see if I can show you here. Focusing is always fun. There's 1.2, so if I push it in a bit, and there's 0.6. So you're only looking at taking off a little tiny bit off the end of this. So I could probably file that off, but what I want to do is mark that with a marker. So we get out marker and mark it. So here I've got myself a Sharpie, and I'll just take this here and touch it with the Sharpie. Now I want to measure the material that I've blackened here with the Sharpie to see what that looks like. Yeah, and that is about 0.5. So I just blackened that. Now I can chuck that up into a probably some kind of a pin vise. I've got my infamous needle in this pin vise, but I can just put the full crown into that pin vise so I get a good grip on it, or the stem rather, not the crown, and push it in deep and see if it grabs the end here. Yeah, there we go. So that's holding the end here, and now I've got to take off just a little bit of material off the end here. So I can do that with a file. That's probably the safest method of doing it, rather than, I could do it on a stone or a file. So one or the other. So let's get out a file. So here I've got a file now. I'm doing this as opposed to nipping it. I'm using a file. That way I can very carefully remove the amount of material I want to get rid of. So I can just go back and forth in the file like that, and keep a very close eye on the material as it's being removed. And we're almost there. You can see there's very little of the black left. I'll go a little bit further here. And a little tiny bit more. And I think that's about as deep as I want to go. And now I want to file the edges just a bit. I probably want a finer file to do that. Here I've got myself a diamond grit file, so this should do a good job on it. And I just want to make sure I file the edges of this so the threads can catch properly. I'll look at that closely to make sure I don't have any issues, but that looks good right there. And because I filed away all of the I filed off the marker, so that's not going to cause a problem. I probably only have to friction fit that, but if I really want to do a good job, what I want to do is actually put a little tiny bit of adhesive in the hole there. That'll hold it in place. So this is like Loctite. It's a thread locker, and it's the blue, and there are different color codes for it. So the red, I think, is fully removable. So this is medium strength, and I want to make sure I don't put too much in there. So what I do there, I can reuse my little needle here that I had earlier, and simply put just a dash on the needle like that. And then I want to put that on the threads, but I don't want a lot on there. I just want a dash on the threads. So let me just turn that around a bit. There, that's all I need on the end there. So if you look at that, you'll see it just have a little tiny bit on the end. And then I think I can hold this and screw this on. I might be better off putting it back in the vise here, because I can then get a grip on it as I turn this properly, right? So let's just see if I can throw that into the vise again, or the clamp. Can also lose it in there, so that thread locker is still on there. It's kind of a consistency of glue, not a glue, but there we go. And now I just put the crown in here, like this. So I'm trying to turn the crown onto this. This is a little trickier. All right, that's good right there. Loosen this up here, and then get the watch. So there's the stem and crown mounted. So that Loctite material should hold that in place. So now all I need to do is put this back in, and hopefully I've got the right sizing here. I just wanted to take a bit off. That looks actually pretty good. So that took a bit off the end, so it's not as far out. And I know that I cannot go much further than that with this particular stem. I could take material off the end of this crown as well, or the tube for the crown, but I just want to leave it like that for now. All right, there we go. So that's tightened in there. It should work. There we go. Setting the time is pulling out and then pushing in, so I've moved it in considerably from where it was before, or 0.5 of a millimeter in. So it's not sticking out as far. It doesn't look as foolish as it did before. So I tighten this a bit more. That'll grab the stem a bit better. There we go. That's good enough. And then I've got to put the case back on. Make sure that just going to steam that up to make sure it's nice and clean. That's on the inside. The outside I'll do in a second. So I just want to put that like this, and I think this will just screw back in nicely and not have to worry about the ball until I get it screwed in. Just always make sure you've got the threads lined up, because you don't want to strip the threads. If you push, or if you try to turn it and it doesn't move much, you're probably going to strip the thread. So just back it off, try again. So here I've got it working nicely now. And I'll just tighten that like that, and let me just grab that ball. So just take the ball like this and place it over and give it a turn or two, just like that. It also cleaned up the back nicely, so I wasn't expecting that, but the ball actually cleaned up the back. So there you go. So that's the crown is now in a much better position than it was. It was stuck out quite far. I took about half the distance off of it, and it still looks pretty good. So there it is. And as you can see, the watch is set. It's at an angle, so when I put it on my wrist, it actually lines up perfectly, because your wrist is always at an angle, and I kind of like that. Now in this watch, as I said before, the fourth wheel pivot was broken off, because that would be around this position right here. So I'd have to get a new fourth wheel from, it's a Chinese Seagull movement, so I'd have to find a new fourth wheel to replace that fourth wheel and put that seconds hand back on. That may be something I do in the future. As well, I have the this bezel here snugs up against the face. That keeps the face in place, so that's in pretty tight. And I just used two pieces of Rodico underneath here to make sure that this doesn't move at all. So it's a little trick I've learned years ago. So it works, although I probably will end up soldering in dial feet at some point in time. But I kind of like it like this. I wish the seconds hand was there and working, but as I said before, it was broken off, snapped off when the dial moved and snapped the dial feet off. So the watch is still serviceable. You can still look at it. Works fine. Winds and sets. There we go. Exactly 10 o'clock. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching my videos. I'm JD. Please tune into my channel for the next adventure.